It starts with a simple thought while you are sitting on your couch, just wondering how they are doing. Before you know it, you've spent an hour scrolling through their sister's vacation photos from 3 years ago just to catch a glimpse of their reflection in a window. You might feel a heavy sense of guilt or frustration with yourself, but it is helpful to look at this with kindness instead of judgment. Learning how to stop stalking your ex isn't about having a weak will. It is about understanding a very powerful biological response that has been triggered in your nervous system. Right now, your brain is trying to solve a puzzle of loss using the only tools it has left, and those tools happen to be digital. When a relationship ends, your brain doesn't just process a change in social status, it processes a physical withdrawal. Research led by Dr. Helen Fisher at Rutgers University used fMRI scans to look at the brains of people who had recently experienced a rejection in love. Her team found that looking at photos of an ex-partner activates the same regions of the brain associated with physical pain, and notably, the same areas active in people struggling with cocaine addiction. When you click that profile, you aren't just being nosy. You are actually seeking a hit of dopamine to soothe a system that is currently in a state of high alert starvation. This drive is deeply rooted in our evolutionary history, where being cast out of the tribe or losing a pair bond was a genuine threat to survival. Your amygdala, that tiny almond-shaped part of your brain responsible for processing emotions and threats, perceives the silence of a breakup as a danger. It interprets the lack of information as a gap that must be filled for you to stay safe. This is why the urge to check their status feels less like a choice and more like a reflex. You are essentially trying to track a lost resource to ensure your world is still intact. When we observe our behavior through this lens, the shame starts to melt away. You are not crazy for wanting to know if they are seeing someone new or if they look as sad as you feel. You are experiencing a profound need for orientation and security. In the wake of a breakup, the map of your life has been torn up. Checking their social media is a desperate attempt to tape the pieces back together so you can figure out where you stand in this new, unfamiliar landscape. There is a specific phenomenon called intermittent reinforcement that makes this habit incredibly hard to break. A study published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology by Dr. B.F. Skinner, though originally focused on different subjects, laid the groundwork for understanding why we repeat behaviors that only occasionally give us a reward. If you check their profile 10 times and see nothing, but on the 11th time you see a post that makes you feel a tiny connection or gives you a shred of info, your brain prizes that 11th time above all others. It teaches you that the next hit could be just one more refresh away. This cycle creates a loop in your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for decision-making and impulse control. Under the stress of heartbreak, the connection between your emotional centers and your logical centers can become frayed. It is as if the brakes on your impulses have been softened. You might know logically that looking will only make you feel worse, but the emotional engine is revving so high that the brakes simply can't hold the car still. Acknowledging this isn't making an excuse. It's identifying the mechanical reality of your current mental state. What you are truly searching for in those pixels is often not the person themselves, but a sense of relief from the unfinished feeling in your chest. In psychology, this is sometimes related to the Zeigarnik effect, named after psychiatrist Bluma Zeigarnik. Her research at the University of Berlin suggested that people remember uncompleted or interrupted tasks better than completed ones. A breakup is the ultimate interrupted task. Your brain keeps the tab open, constantly scanning for more data to try and bring the story to a close, which keeps you stuck in a loop of digital surveillance. Because these feelings are so heavy, it helps to have a space where you can sort through them without the noise of the internet. There's actually a quiet, beautiful game built around this exact idea. A 3D sanctuary called Inner Phoenix, but more on that in a minute. For now, let's look at how we can start to lower the volume of that need to know by focusing on what your body is actually telling you during those moments of high anxiety. To change the habit, we have to look at the physical sensation that precedes the click. Usually, there is a tightness in the throat, a fluttering in the stomach, or a sudden spike in restlessness. This is your sympathetic nervous system kicking into fight or flight mode. Dr. Stephen Porges, the researcher behind polyvagal theory at the University of North Carolina, explains that when we feel disconnected or rejected, our bodies move out of a state of social engagement and into a state of defense. Stalking is often a misguided attempt to fight for the connection or flee from the discomfort of being alone. When you feel that spike, your body is flooded with cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol is designed to give you energy to escape a physical predator, but in the modern world, that energy has nowhere to go. It sits in your limbs, making you feel jittery and desperate. By reaching for your phone to check an ex's profile, you are trying to use a digital action to solve a chemical problem. Understanding that this itch is actually just a surge of cortisol can help you pause. You aren't lacking discipline. You are currently riding a chemical wave that needs to crash. This is where somatic techniques become a powerful tool for change. Instead of arguing with your thoughts, you can talk directly to your nervous system. Research published in the journal Frontiers in Psychology by a team at the University of Hertfordshire suggests that simple grounding exercises can significantly lower acute anxiety. When the urge to check social media hits, try pressing your feet firmly into the floor and naming 3 objects you see in the room. This shifts the blood flow from the reactive amygdala back to the logical prefrontal cortex, giving you a few seconds of clarity to choose a different path. We also need to address the vagus nerve, which acts as the highway between your brain and your internal organs. In a study conducted at the University of Utah, researchers found that high vagal tone is associated with better emotional regulation. You can manually stimulate this nerve to calm the stalking impulse. A long, slow exhale, longer than your inhale, signals to your brain that there is no immediate threat. It's like sending a stand-down order to your internal security team, making the desperate need for information feel less like a life-or-death emergency. Validation is a crucial part of this process. If you find yourself having already checked their page, the worst thing you can do is beat yourself up. A meta-analysis published in the Personality and Social Psychology Review by Dr. Kristen Neff at the University of Texas at Austin shows that self-compassion is more effective than self-criticism for changing habits. When you shame yourself, you trigger more cortisol, which makes you feel more stressed, which actually increases the urge to seek a hit of dopamine from their profile. Breaking the cycle starts with saying, "I am hurting, and that is why I did this." We often think that just one look will provide closure, but research suggests the opposite. A study in the journal Cyberpsychology, Behavior, and Social Networking found that people who engaged in interpersonal electronic surveillance, the clinical term for stalking an ex, experienced more distress and lower personal growth. Each time you look, you are essentially picking a scab on a wound that is trying to heal. You aren't getting closer to an answer. You are just keeping the injury fresh and preventing the natural inflammatory process of grief from concluding. The needs behind this behavior are often very simple: a need for connection, a need for certainty, or a need for mourning. When you feel the urge to stalk, try to name the need out loud. Instead of saying, "I need to see what he's doing," try saying, "I am feeling lonely and I need to feel like I still matter." By identifying the underlying need, you can find a healthier way to meet it. If you need connection, call a friend. If you need certainty, focus on a small task you can complete right now, like washing a single dish or folding a shirt. To effectively stop the cycle, we have to address what researchers call environmental cues. A study by a team at Duke University found that nearly 45% of our daily behaviors are habit-driven, triggered by the locations and objects around us. If you always check their profile while lying in bed or sitting at your kitchen table, those physical spots have become hot zones for your nervous system. Your brain associates that chair with the dopamine hit of seeing their face. Changing your physical environment, even just moving your phone to a different room, can break the automaticity of the impulse before it gains momentum. One of the most effective methods for long-term change is implementation intentions, a concept developed by Dr. Peter Gallwitzer at New York University. This involves creating a specific if-then plan. Instead of a vague goal like I'll stop checking, you decide, if I feel the urge to type their name, then I will immediately open a notes app and write down 3 things I am grateful for today. This creates a new neural pathway. By pre-deciding your response, you take the heavy lifting off your willpower and turn a moment of weakness into a pre-programmed healthy choice. We often mistake digital closeness for emotional resolution. However, a study published in the journal Motivation and Emotion suggests that high levels of avoidant coping, which includes digital monitoring, actually prevent the process of meaning making. Meaning making is the psychological stage where you integrate the breakup into your life story. When you are looking at their new posts, you are staying in their story rather than writing your own. You are essentially freezing the clock, keeping yourself in a state of suspended animation where the past is more vivid than your present. It is also helpful to utilize a technique from cognitive behavioral therapy known as cognitive reframing. When the urge hits, your brain tells you a story. I need to see if they are happy so I can know if our time together meant anything. You can reframe this observation. Instead of seeking evidence of their life, you can observe your own need for validation. You might say, I am looking for proof that I was loved. I can provide that proof to myself by honoring my boundaries today. This shifts the power from their social media feed back into your own hands. Digital boundaries aren't an act of aggression. They are an act of self-preservation. Dr. Tara Marshall at Brunel University London conducted research showing that people who remain friends with an ex on social media have a much harder time recovering and experience less personal growth. Muting, unfollowing, or blocking is not petty. It is a way of creating a digital sanctuary for your mind to rest. Just as you wouldn't keep a physical alarm clock that goes off at random times to scream your ex's name, you shouldn't feel obligated to keep a digital one in your pocket. The process of uncoupling in the brain takes time because of a neurochemical called oxytocin, often called the bonding hormone. When you were together, oxytocin created a deep sense of safety and trust. After a breakup, your brain is still wired to seek that oxytocin from the same source. When you stalk them online, you are trying to trigger a ghost of that bonding feeling. Recognizing that your brain is simply homesick for a chemical state can make the urge feel less like a personal failing and more like a biological transition that requires patience. Sometimes the most productive thing you can do when the urge is overwhelming is to engage in expressive writing. Research by Dr. James Pennybaker at the University of Texas has shown that writing about stressful experiences for just 15 minutes a day can improve immune function and reduce emotional distress. Instead of typing their name into a search bar, type your own feelings into a private document. Get the why and the how out of your head and onto the page. This moves the information from the swirling loops of the amygdala into the structured processing centers of the brain. As you move further away from the initial breakup, you might notice that the urges don't disappear, but they change in character. They often strike during transition times, that period between finishing work and starting dinner, or right before sleep. A study by researchers at the University of Amsterdam found that our self-control is like a muscle that gets fatigued over the course of the day. This ego depletion makes it harder to resist the digital pull in the evening. Recognizing your vulnerability windows allows you to set up an evening ritual that doesn't involve a screen, protecting your progress when your willpower is naturally lower. There is a concept in psychology called extinction bursts. When you stop a behavior that used to provide a reward, your brain doesn't give up immediately. It actually ramps up the urge one last time to see if the reward will return. It's like pressing a button on a vending machine harder when the snack doesn't fall out. If you find the urge to check their profile getting stronger after a week of sobriety, don't take it as a sign of failure. It is actually a sign that the old habit is dying. Your brain is making one last-ditch effort before it finally begins to rewire itself. We can also look at the role of social comparison theory, first proposed by Dr. Leon Festinger. When we stalk an ex, we are usually comparing our behind the scenes, our internal pain, our messy house, our loneliness with their highlight reel, the one photo where they look happy. This creates a cognitive distortion that they are winning the breakup. In reality, a photo is just a data point, not a complete narrative. Reminding yourself that you are comparing your messy reality to a curated digital mask can help take the emotional sting out of whatever you might accidentally see. To build a more resilient mind, we can use dopamine fasting for specific apps. Research from the University of California, San Francisco, suggests that taking intentional breaks from stimuli-rich environments helps recalibrate our brain's reward system. If the how to stop stalking your ex journey feels impossible, try just a 4-hour window of total digital absence. During this time, engage in a high-sensory, low-tech activity like gardening, cooking a complex meal, or taking a cold shower. These activities provide a reset for your nervous system, making the quiet of your own life feel more tolerable. It is helpful to replace the search for them with a search for yourself. This isn't about finding a new hobby to distract you, but about reclaiming the mental real estate they currently occupy. In the field of positive psychology, Dr. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi identified a state called flow, where you are so involved in an activity that nothing else seems to matter. When you are in flow, the urge to check social media disappears because your brain is fully nourished by the present task. Finding an activity that challenges you just enough can provide a natural exit ramp from the stalking loop. When you do slip up, and most people do, practice grit rather than perfection. A study on habit formation at University College London found that missing a single day of a new habit does not materially affect the long-term success of that habit. What matters is what you do the next day. If you spent last night scrolling through their feed, don't throw away the whole week. Wake up, acknowledge the slip with a deep breath, and return to your if-then plan. Resilience is not the absence of mistakes. It is the speed of your recovery from them. As your nervous system settles, you will start to notice glimmers, the opposite of triggers. These are small moments of peace, like the taste of a good cup of coffee or the way the light hits a tree. Neurobiologist Dr. Polyvagal theory researchers often point to these moments as signs that you are moving back into a ventral vagal state of safety and connection. When you notice a glimmer, pause for 10 seconds to let it sink in. You are teaching your brain that it is safe to be in the present moment without needing to know what someone from your past is doing. Healing isn't a straight line. It is a series of loops that gradually get wider and more comfortable. Eventually, the day will come when you realize you haven't thought about checking their profile for 24 hours, then 48, then a week. You aren't erasing them. You are simply allowing the memory to take its proper place in the library of your life, as a book that has been read and returned to the shelf, rather than a live news feed you have to monitor. You are reclaiming your attention, which is the most precious thing you own. And hey, before you go, there's a 3D game called Inner Phoenix. You walk through it like a quiet temple, with rooms for what you're observing, what you're feeling, what you need, and what you might try next. It was made for exactly these moments when the digital world feels too loud and you need a place to land. No pressure. It's in the description below, and you can scan the QR code on screen to visit whenever you're ready. You've got this.